you guys both for joining me today. I'm really excited to talk about transformation. We have Agnis Stibe. He is the founder of Transform.me, and he is also the founder of the theory called Transforming Well-Beings, also known as the Professor of Transformation. So also joining us today, we have Manda Scott. She's the co-founder of Accidental Gods, which is a program facilitating conscious evolution. In addition to that, she's a podcaster, a sustainable economist, and a best-selling author. Thank you so much for joining us today. And let's jump into some of the questions that we have today. We are talking all about transformation, and for some of those joining us that might be new to the concept, and also, there are so many different kinds of definitions of what transformation means in different contexts. I'd love for each of you to share what transformation means and looks like to you.
Transformation is a sustainable change. That's a definition. The changes happen all the time. We are the changes, the world is the changes, and only when we achieve those changes to be sustainable, then we get to the transformation. That's to introduce the transformation in a very short and very comprehensible way. Over to you.
Yeah, it has to be sustainable. For me, transformation has to be radical. It's not incremental. For me, to transform is to change from one state to another. And so I'm particularly interested in my role as Accidental Gods founder is making things, creating a state in which we can radically transform humanity. Because transformation of other things may happen, but I think both of us, Agnis and I, are both looking at how can we transform the nature of what it is to be human. And for me, that means a real radical shift from the nature of what it has been to be human to something that is definitely sustainable, but is radically different to where we are now.
Really interesting. And so as we're sort of looking, so my next question, but I think you've answered some of it, which was, what are we looking towards? Is it to be sustainable in business as humans? So it's obviously the transformation we're talking about is around, human nature. So how did we sort of end up in this place where now, we are needing to transform and really think about how we are as humans?
How did we end up in this place? 13.2 billion years of evolution. We are where we are. How we got here is, I think, possibly a whole other call, a whole other podcast, a whole other video. But because we are where we are, and in the spiritual world, the shamanic world that I tend to live in, we get a lot of questions of how did we get here, because we're living out of context with the rest of the web of life. And my belief is that one of the things we need to do is to get back into context with that. And how did we get here? We chose somewhere along the line, we chose to step out of context and chose to live in a world with the patriarchal wounding of lack and separation and powerlessness. And we made those choices and we inflicted those things on ourselves. But the thing that I think is really important is if you talk to any of the people who've had near-death experiences or anything like that, they all, without exception, come back and go, we are where we need to be. And so I think that's my starting point. We are where we are. We can't go back and change the past. If we are where we need to be, how do we carry that future into the transformation that we need? Over to Agnis.
All right, thank you. Nice perspective. So about the transformation and what we are looking for into the transformation. Over the last decade, I was more looking into how we can amplify or how we can sustain change using technology design. And over my experience at Massachusetts Institute of Technology and also doing my PhD around social influencing systems and then transforming cities, and now as a professor, I realized at one point of time, it's not enough. There is something missing in this equation. And then in the last year, I reverted my attention inwards, because this is where this answer is actually hidden. It's our human change and how we can understand it. So generally, if we speak about transformation, it's easy to speak about transforming stuff outside, right? Repaint the building, rebuild the city, redirect a river if needed, right? But about innate, inherent mastery of change, I think this is what we are after right now on our journey to understand the transformation and make it successful for individuals, for organizations, and for the societies.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. And actually, as you're kind of talking about that innate kind of need to change within, one thing kind of comes to mind. It's very topical, and it might even be controversial. I'm sure we're all sort of aware of what's going on in America and some of these things where it's challenging people to, again, look kind of inwardly at themselves about, you know, the future of, again, kind of transforming these ideas that have been so embedded for so long. Do you have any kind of comments to exactly that transformation that people are trying to, you know, change right now?
Sustainable change or transformation can really be embraced only after people embrace all of their human nature, including all of their past, their all biology, and all of the given to us through our genetics even. And then knowing that we have evolved as human beings and species over the thousands of years and possibly even more is a great reminder as we have excelled into expanding our intelligence over the last years. Now we have more awareness, or we have access to the more awareness that we can dedicate for self-exploration in terms of self-change. And why I'm speaking about the self-change is because it's only when we change ourselves, we are then mirroring that to the other people around. And this is how we amplify through our social fabric, that we can amplify the change and scale it up. So therefore, if we have currently big issues, global challenges, certainly there is a reason, or there's a past, or there's a history how we got there. But there is also in this history evidence that we have very powerful tools that shape attitudes of people and societal behaviors at scale. Even if we take the basic example of marketing, smoking in the last century, it was just promoted and it was very successful. And now what I'm saying is we use the same tools, but in the other direction. And this is how it goes. We have everything. It's our choice. Do we accept it? We need to be honest. Where do we want to go? And then use the tools that have been proven to be very successful in helping people change and societies to transform.
Really interesting. And what are your thoughts, Manda?
We need to define we in that. There's so much that we could unpick in here. Mm-hmm. So I would tend to look at this through the lens of Joanna Macy's 3 pillars of the Great Turning. And those 3 pillars are holding actions, systems design, and shifting consciousness. And in that framing, we need all 3 in order to create the Great Turning. And I think what we're seeing on the streets as we record, you know, America is running towards civil war. And without question, what we're seeing is a civilized veneer taken off a boiling situation that has been boiling for 400 years. And we know, for instance, in one of the technologies that we know completely is that if the police need to police something and they police in a way that is unarmed and where they are not confrontational, then the situation is much less likely to turn violent. And so what they do is turn up massively overhanded and fully armed. And guess what? It turns violent. So, and Agnes is completely right. If we were to invert what is happening, we could create a holding action that might avert civil war in the short term. But what we're both talking about is that we need the systems design and the shift in consciousness. And the shift in consciousness, as Agnes said, can only start with each of us individually. And then the energetic effect of that ripples out. My question, as I'm watching this happen, is what is the timescale of that? And what are the critical numbers? I think with anything, there's a critical mass beyond which the energetic mass of that shifts change exponentially. I don't know. Gurdjieff said you just needed 200 fully enlightened beings to change the whole planet. I don't even know where he got that number from, and I don't know what constitutes a fully enlightened being. So it's not a necessarily useful metric. Because it seems to me that we're accelerating towards chaos much faster than I thought even a year ago. And it's not just the virus, and it's not just the social and political disintegrations that we're seeing. We're in the middle of a 12-week drought in a countryside where fundamentally it rains every day, only it doesn't anymore. So we could easily be heading towards food shortages in the autumn, worldwide. So we need to be doing those personal shifts. And then the question is, how do we give people the tools? Because I think for people like Agnis and me, this is fundamental to who we are. It is the single most important thing in my life, and I think listening to Agnis, it is the single most important thing in his life. But we need it to be the most important thing in the lives of millions, if not billions. And how do we get there from here? And I don't have an answer for that. I just know that it's something that we need to find an answer to quite quickly.
Thank you guys for those thoughts. I appreciate it's a sensitive subject, but one kind of talking about transformation, hard to ignore.
Yeah.
So, in this idea of transformation, there are lots of conversations around it, and often, I imagine there's a kind of a degree of varying end results that some might think, okay, we've achieved, transformation. Some might have a different end result. So I'm just curious if it's important to have one clear vision for people kind of looking to transform, or if, you can still kind of make the changes and the transformation happen with kind of varying goals.
I think we'll only know that in retrospect.
Okay.
To be honest, I think for me, transformation means not just a paradigm shift, it means abandoning all paradigms. This is, Donella Meadows, the top of her leverage points of change. And if we abandon all paradigms successfully, and successfully, if I am right, if the complexity theorists are right, that any system reaches maximal complexity, and then its timeline bifurcates, and it either crashes into chaos and extinction, or it emerges to a new system. I am working flat out towards emergence for a new system, because I'm not that fond of the chaos and extinction arm of that. And I think we have to be near that tipping point of maximal complexity. And the point about that is, the new system is never predictable from the perspective of the old system. If it is predictable, it's not a new system. It's just a reiteration of the old system. So I think that whatever brings us to the likelihood where that bifurcation happens, that we emerge to a new system, is a good thing. And again, I'm putting all of my life into going that way instead of that way. And if anybody's got other ideas of how we get there, that's completely fine by me. And I really think we will only know the answer to that when we look back from wherever we get to. Agnis,
what do you think?
If the question is whether do we have a unified target, or unifying story, or unifying aim for the transformation globally, generally, societally, I think I could come up with one, but then instead of being a one unifying, generalized, like on the mass scale, it would be again coming down to individual. And then because we individuals, we're sharing so many things, that would be just a shared agenda. For me, transformation means that we are coming back to realize who we are. Most of my own personal transformations is just about overcoming something that was redundant and placed into my life, either by conditioning, either by the regime, either by the other observations, either by friends, either by enemies, either by just the circumstances. And this journey, obviously, now has become very popular. So people go into meditation, into the retreats, into the consciousness discoveries. And why? This is exactly the aim for the global transformation, is finding ourselves, our true nature, and getting in line with that. And one aspect that I would like to add on top of that is that the people, experts, scientists in physics are now speaking about the physics of consciousness. And this is getting exciting, because 400 years ago, there was the paradigm shift. Oh, our Earth is not flat. And then a few hundred years ago, oh, we are not the center of the solar system. I predict the next decade, this decade, will be giving a huge contribution in the realization of the physics of the consciousness, which will be all about the vibration, the frequencies, and our most natural predisposition to who we are and how we interrelate with everyone and everything in the nature on this planet. And that's I think the ultimate goal of the transformation. We are getting into our natural states that have been distorted for thousands of years or have been made difficult. So, or have been difficult because of our evolution, but we are at that point where we can leap that and be very happy with who we are and actually be thriving and flourishing just by removing what has been accumulated and is not at our service anymore.
Can I ask a question of Agnis? So I think I go along with almost all of that, except that I think we need to do much more of asking for help from the rest of the web of life, because I think this idea that as people we have the answers is very anthropocentric, and we have, you know, at least 10,000 years of evidence that it's not really very good. But so I would ask, in that worldview, why are we where we are? Because there's a sense of either we are returning back to what we were, or we are moving forward to what we could be. If we are returning back to what we were, and what we were was a species that lived much more in context. We were wildlife. We were just wildlife that used a few more tools than the rest of it, but we were intimately connected with the rest of the web of life. Why have we gone through, let's say, for the sake of argument, 10,000 years of separation? To what end? If we're going back. So this is why I think we have to go forward, that there must be something in these 10,000 years that we have created with ourselves that was essential to where we need to get to. But I don't know what it is, and Agnis might have ideas of that.
Good question. Excellent. Maybe vocabulary that I'm using is sometimes provocative. This is what I use in my talks. I'm putting in the perspective of black and white. I like playing chess, so that makes perfect sense. And then people are like, oh, why? How can it be like this? And then, oh, no, it's all good. It was just a play with the words. Certainly we are moving forward. And even if we believe that time is just a linear, so we're kind of moving that direction, it's just that I would also reflect back to what you said. There are these tipping points. And at every tipping point, we make a huge decision where to go. And then it's taken by the major part of our society, and then it kind of shifts our direction one way or the other. So therefore, we are having this history of leaping through one after another, the revolutions, different kind of revolutions. And here, what I'm saying is, in every leap, when we have chosen which way to go at every crossroad, it's a journey of exploration. It's a journey of discovery. What's on this road? And then if we look back to our last revolution, which is digitalization, which is the connectivity and all of that, and the technology as the everything and penetrating all the parts of our lives, of course, we've seen that it actually mirrors back to how we get addicted to it, how we get to different kind of things. And this is the tipping point. What do we do with this new thing that we discovered on this road? And therefore, we kind of are reminded that once something becomes unnatural to us, that's the tipping point. Then it's when we look at it and realize, oh, well, we would like to move on, but we will not take this baggage with us, because we realized on this journey, as we were evolving and creating more new experiences and new life design, it has become burden for our nature. So this is at least the way how I see it. We are leaping over the periods of time. Let me give you an example. Let's look at money. There were stones, there were coins, there were bills, and then there were bank cards. Oh, no way. And then bank cards are okay. Now, oh, these distributed new platforms, blockchain, Bitcoin. So we're kind of gaining back to there. And why blockchain and Bitcoin and all of these currencies are now so attractive? Because people looking for trust. because they have lost some sort of trust or some level of trust in the monetary systems, in the actual financial instruments of today. So what does it say to us? Our nature asks for deep inherent trust, that we can trust between each other, trust between us and financial instruments. That's why these new emerging technologies show up. It's only for the nature to call for this. And of course, it will be slightly challenging because the adoption of these new financial instruments will take another burden to overcome. But generally, this is how we make the progress.
I think that leads really well into sort of talking about some of the concepts that are close to both of you as far as kind of your personal philosophies and what you're looking at, and that being human technology with Agnis and sort of the combination of technology aiding in kind of human nature and evolving in that way, and conscious evolution. So, you know, as you're talking about us moving forward and potentially, you know, we are in this digital age, and predictions into the future look a lot towards things being automated, things being, you know, very tech robots and all these different elements. I'm curious if, you know, those concepts of human technology and conscious evolution at all work against each other when trying to achieve transformation, or is it something that actually aligns quite well?
If I've understood the human technology correctly, then I think they align perfectly. And also, from what Agnis has said now, for him, the changes are internal.
Yes.
Because technology is neutral. What we do with it is what makes it useful or not useful.
Mm.
And so for me, all of the changes need to be internal. My question with a lot of the digitization and the future of technology is, have we got time to get there? You know, we're looking at climate tipping points that are giving us a very short time frame within which to sort ourselves out. Jem Vandal, who wrote the deep adaptation paper, I listened to a podcast that he recorded a year ago. He said at that point, he's 47, he wasn't really expecting to see 52.
Wow.
And his big three were that if the forests of the world became net carbon emitters instead of net carbon sinks, and if both polar ice caps shrunk to their minimum, and if we started getting methane hydrates boiling off at either end, then we were heading for irreversible tipping points. All three of those happened last year. So I think I wouldn't want to rely on technology for getting us to where we need to be, because I'm not sure we have time to do that. I am also very aware that the people at the moment who hold the power tend to be the people who are devising the technology, and they're not, as far as I can tell, heading too far down the road of self-awareness and personal evolution. So I get a little bit, you know, there's a whole movement to bring wisdom to those with power and power to those with wisdom, and I want to accelerate that. Mm-hmm. So then, over to Agnis.
Excellent. Recently, I think possibly because of inspiration from seeing you speaking about conscious evolution, so I realized what I'm doing is exactly that. I'm accelerating conscious evolution as much as possible. And certainly technology plays its role, and technology by definition is neutral, but then it's about the intent of the designer or the developer. So therefore, first of all, technology is an amplifier, great amplifier, but it amplifies what you've been telling the technology to do. And the same with artificial intelligence. So people are, oh, the movie show, this is gonna go crazy. No, it's gonna go where there's people in the power or people in charge of developing, they're gonna instruct that. So wrapping it up, technology is nothing more than a huge, huge mirror of our human nature. It amplifies everything that we tell it to do. And that's why we have this attention economy. It was created by technology design. So here we go. And the good news is the people working towards self-awareness and consciousness are paving the way for bringing much better instructions for technology. And this is what we are doing. And imagine when I speak about artificial intelligence, it can be instructed to create great algorithms with a great efficiency. But if the instructions are not clear, what actually it has to be looking at and what would be actually helpful for the human mankind, it will just produce a certain amount of result, which will be much better than maybe people because of the capabilities and capacities of technology. But imagine if we improve our instructions to the artificial intelligence by tiny bit, and then it amplifies that, the results are much, much bigger. So this is why I'm speaking to my students at the executive MBA or the students that are looking into the artificial intelligence. I'm saying, it's great that you can program. It's great that you can improve the efficiency of the algorithms. But if you're not giving the right question to technology, you're not getting any answer that would be meaningful for you.
Yeah, really great. So sort of what I'm getting from this is it's a lot about one, sort of who's in power and what they're kind of guiding these technologies to sort of be reflecting in society, and two, that again, it's not really technology that is sort of to fear. It's more, who are we? Who are the people that are kind of controlling the conversation about what we should be doing with this technology? Is it leaders' responsibilities to be identifying these areas of transformation?
Yes. Yes. We have to have passionate, energetic leaders speaking about this constantly all over the place. And this is how we are mirroring. Because what makes a leader in this conscious evolution different from others is just the fact that they have told to themselves that I feel how this whole thing works. I feel how the evolution happens. I feel how the connection to the consciousness is actually helping us. And then I feel how the technology then be complementary to accelerate, to amplify, to make these ripples much more powerful. So leadership is, I would again refer back to genetics. So everyone has a gene of leadership. And then it's not necessarily mean that you have to lead a large organization. It doesn't mean you have to be the global organization for saving the world. It's enough if you are a leader for your kids. It's enough that you are a leader for your friends. It's enough that you're a leader for your randomly people that you meet while you sit in a cafe. And then they say, oh, I've heard you speak about the transformation. I'm very curious. And how that, and you also mentioned about the consciousness. Could you tell me a little bit more? That's it. And then when you shine that out, that light shines to their genes and they become like curious. Oh, actually I could do that too. And then they tell the story, how they went to Paris, they sit in a cafe and they had this random conversation, and this is how it ripples. Mm-hmm. So leadership is innate, inherent for people. And it's again, to what degree we are willing and we have energy and we have passion to spread it. And those circles can be larger or smaller, but we all can do it.
Yeah. And we know from the coronavirus that even if you have an R number of 1.3, 1.4, you have exponential growth. So everybody just needs to inspire a little bit more than one other person, and then you have exponential growth. One of the issues that we have at the moment is, how do we define power? How do we allow power? And how do we distribute it? And I think one of the most exciting things growing out of Extinction Rebellion and the things like it were the different ways of distributing power and of empowering people within that. And it seems to me that what we're heading for, what it feels to me that we're heading for, is a system where you've got this kind of crust of outward power, Boris Johnson, Trump, Cummings, those people who are definitely pulling strings and definitely, endeavoring to do stuff, whatever that stuff is. And underneath, on the actual ground, you have networks and networks and ecosystems of networks and ecosystems of ecosystems of people who are affecting change, to the point where we can go, you guys, you're not actually doing anything useful. We don't need you anymore. And one of the most effective things we could do would be all to get together and go, you know what? We're having a new form of money. Mm. Because at the moment, the people with the most dollars have the most power. We have democracies that have, the best system money can buy. And if you were able to say, we're all dealing with a different currency now. Your dollars are actually worthless. Then the distribution of power would change overnight. Which is why they don't really like blockchain very much. I mean, why all the big banks are trying to design their own blockchain systems. There would be ways of doing that, I think, that would make a big difference, as well as all of the internal work that we're doing.
It's incredibly interesting, and because I was sort of thinking, you know, as you guys are talking, it's one of the biggest challenges is when you have leaders in power or kind of people who have the ability to make decisions and do all these different things. What the challenge is these are kind of existing thinkings, and a lot of times it's really hard to change that thinking. So, you know, your kind of thought around there's actually, if we on a lower level start making these different changes in thought and having these conversations, eventually one day these, you know, people in power will sort of phase out to the new kind of, you know, transformed leader that we're looking for.
We'll look for energy. And energies are of various kinds. And I think if we look to the people in power, they have more access to more kinds of energy. What's money? Money is nothing more than a stored energy. And it can be accumulated and managed. And that's what gives the perceived power, because we have the perceived value of that energy. And then we have delusions that people attach to the money. So therefore, I would say if we try to simplify, and this is what I do in my work, I try to simplify to the degree that's very simple, but not simpler. And then try to speak to that to my kids if needed, or my grandparents if needed. So power is sometimes perceived power because of the access to the different sorts of energies, including money, maybe other natural resources that belong actually not to the people, but to the countries and nations. And then also some real power, which comes down to the leadership. That's what we spoke just a few moments ago. It's the power that is naturally shared and appreciated and given to those that are leading by the example, that are energizing others, that are tapping into this infinite energy that we have through our consciousness and awareness and our self-managing the energies, and then we're channeling those energies through the others. And I think that's the new form of power. And it always has been with us. And again, if you look to the Industrial Revolution, it kind of was like veiled and covered with all of these perceptions and difficulties that people had to survive and get their things together. But we are moving onwards, and therefore the power structures will be changing, and the natural power that comes through our innate and ability to access our possibly invisible energy flows and energy fields that we are by definition, that would be the future of our leadership and power structures.
Is transformation always the way forward, or, you know, are there instances where transformation can be counterproductive?
Anything can happen also with the transformation. Transformation is a concept that we are discussing today, and of course we have to do that. But again, we have to remind ourselves, we built the language. I mean, we as the mankind, and we now use English language, and then in English language we have this word that most likely emerged from Latin to some degree. And then we kind of have the perception, and that perception can be perceived by different people in different ways. In any case, I always leave the room for any unexpected circumstances to happen. While we are thinking about positive transformation, certainly there can be a negative transformation, or there can be a side effect of positive transformation. The work that we've been doing in our scientific world, and we will look at different ways how to help people changing their behaviors. For example, we wrote one scientific paper about persuasive backfiring. Is how sometimes your good intentions and your technology design actually can backfire through the human nature. So therefore, there can be, theoretically, if I speak as a scientist, theoretically, there can be counterproductive transformation, especially if it's intentionally led by dark leaders or by dark intentions. Otherwise, if we are honest with ourselves, if everyone is living their best possible person, then I don't think there is a room for a negative transformation. So it's, again, coming back to ourselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. Manda, what about you?
Yes. So yeah, I think we're back to the last thing that Agnes said, which is, for me, I am going for the radical transformation of what it means to be human. It's a step change to a new system. And I think that that would be impossible to be counterproductive if what we're looking at is the evolution of consciousness. This is the next evolving step. But it will, for instance, probably be considered counterproductive by people who would like us to head into a white patriarchal, fascist state. They're not going to want that. So I guess it depends a bit on your sense of perspective. If you are the person who is endeavoring to garner the most money the world has ever seen, and we all go, you know what, dollar's not worth anything anymore, then that would be considered counterproductive from that viewpoint. I think in terms of the view of the majority, they would not see it like that. But I think in terms of, if we look at the planet as a whole, as opposed to people, if humanity does not transform, we are not only going to render ourselves extinct, we're going to render almost all other life extinct, which is a pretty bad outcome from my viewpoint. So anything that we can do to not get to that end point is, we have to do it. We have a responsibility and a duty and the potential to make it happen.
Looking at, as we mentioned, sort of what's happening now in America, but also we're in this global pandemic that has affected everyone across the globe. Do you think that transformation has been affected in any way as far as the speed? Is it something that maybe might allow acceleration of transformation to happen, or is it something that's kind of slowed the progress?
I've gone through a real sine wave of moments of real hope that this was going to give everybody a chance to pause. In economic circles, when I was doing the regenerative economics, we had a metaphor that the fossil fuel-based extractivist economy was like a Boeing 747 in full flight. And the only thing that was going to work was changing that into being a helicopter in midair, which is really hard. Basically, it's going to fall out of the sky. We had no idea how you could stop the extractivist economy and redirect it. And then the pandemic happened. And the Boeing 747 landed. It pretty much globally.
Yeah.
The extractivist economy just stopped. I saw a map on Facebook of a little orange dot everywhere where there was an oil tanker that was not moving. And yes, just leave them there. Don't let them disintegrate because that'd be bad, but just don't ever move those tankers. Would that not be amazing? And so what we have got is a narrative shift. It is no longer possible for people to say we can't do that because we just did it. I'm in that phase of the sign we're at the moment because we seem to be heading back to business as usual. I think, guys, and there are voices in the existing political power structure saying we need a Green New Deal. And we need much, much more than that. But locally, what I'm finding and the people that I'm speaking to is so many people have realized that the rat race that they were in is not what they wanted. That their jobs were bullshit jobs. That they did not like getting up and running into work and staying in work all day every day. And that actually what they really loved was going and volunteering on the local box scheme to grow actual local food for actual local people, and that they really want to continue that. And I am hoping that we have a critical mass of those people going, it was bollocks. I don't want to do that anymore.
That's very natural. When circumstances change, that's the time for people to realize what has been happening all the time, what is not happening anymore, and what possibly can happen. I think that's a great reminder. I'm referring to all of these big challenges or the big shifts or sudden shifts as a big reminder. So people have time to reconsider and kind of step away from their rat race, if I may say so. So therefore, it's good. It's good to have these reminders. If we don't give time with ourselves and remind about who we are, then somebody else will do it. And nature, which is part of us, and we are part of nature, we are one, is sometimes helping us to get mindful and to give different kind of reminders. The same thing about technology adoption. All of these platforms for team meetings, they're all accessible, available all the time before this happened. But now suddenly people say, okay, it's all right. We will not fly our 2-3 managers from different cities over to this city to an airport meeting for 4 hours. No, not anymore. Therefore, all of the people that say, oh, we are kind of coming back to somewhere, no, we are not going back anywhere. I think all of the, I wouldn't say redundant, but all of the luxury services, all of these possibly not the main core needed products and services, they're the first ones that were closed. And this is a natural selection. What do we have on this planet? Natural selection. It has been with us all the time. And this is what happened now. It was just another round. Nature is smart. We are part of the nature. So we are smart too. But when we play together, we are much wiser.
Great finishing thought on that. We have this vision of where we would like this transformation to go. And I'm just sort of wondering if there's kind of this invisible line that once we reach it, we feel like, okay, we've transformed enough. And most likely the answer is that it's a never-ending journey. But, imagine we've achieved enlightenment or whatever that bit is where we work so cohesively with nature. Is there kind of that point which you just say, okay, we've hit this, and there's no more work to do?
No, I think we are consciousness evolving, and I don't think evolution has an end point. And if it does, I think it's so far away from where we are just now that that it's hypothetical at best. So no, I think the win at the moment and the threshold is, let's not render everything extinct. When we have managed the not rendering everything extinct goal, there will be other goals.
Does a transformation threshold exist? And scientific answer to that, no. Because at least in my definition of transformation, it's a vector. It's a straight line with an arrow at the end of it. Mm-hmm. And when it's practiced on an individual level, and if you want to be a person who is, say, brushing your teeth not 2 times a day, but 3 times a day, you can do it. I think anyone can do it, because if you can do it twice, you can do it 3 times and 4 times. But people don't do that, and then kind of have their own routines and ways how they kind of get around with the maintaining 2. But imagine if that's your case and you want to become a person who is doing 4 times a day, for example, then that requires a change in your personality. And I think the journey is eternal, because if you stop doing it, you're reverting back to where you were before, and your transformation is unsuccessful. So therefore, for the transformation to be successful, it's just a directional. And maybe to give a little bit background how the transformation change differs from the 2 other types. So there are 3 types of change. Transactional, one time, simple, deal, bargain. You exchange money for the oranges. You exchange your 10 push-ups for your desire to be stronger or more healthier. And you do it once and never again, or you buy a membership and you never go to the gym. Mm-hmm. Nothing really happens. Transaction. Transition, it has a period of time. So imagine you bought your membership and you actually go to the gym, but it has the end point. It has the end date. And some people have the psychological jail, and they put themselves in the jail. I'm going to go and do this difficult gym thing again and again and again. But I know after a year it's going to be over. Mm. And then what happens after a year? People just don't extend it, and they're back to where they were before. So imagine the first one, transaction, is a point in time. Transition is a line. Mm. And the problem with a transition is there's an end point, which is a trap, which is a delusion. So we have to remove it. And when we remove it, then the line is eternal, and it's pretty much reverts into the arrow, into the vector. So that's why pretty much there is, like from my science, there is no threshold for that.
Yeah, I think that would break it down for people who are watching really well. How do you guys think that leaders can set the stage for change?
In here. So leaders set the stage internally for themselves. And this is how they activate all of the possible genes that are helping them. The transformation gene, the leadership gene, the impact gene, the care about others gene, the we are one gene, and all of those. And then when the stage is set, which means how to set the stage is to build it up and practice over and over again. Be honest with yourself. Don't give you any kind of excuses. Don't listen to your past. Don't remember how the other people have done it wrong. Just constantly following your river of energy, your river of how you feel being purposeful on this planet. And you have that access to the energy every day, and you wake it up. And if you don't give it away to somebody else, to your phone or to other thoughts that are unnecessary, this is how the people setting up the stage. Leadership is something that is actually intertwined and shines through the small, tiny details. It's not about how you have constructed the highest building in your city. That's not the leadership. The leadership is how you master your own life and how you've been truthful and honest with yourself. And that example shines onto the others. And this is what is attracting other people's attention through their genes, that they're saying, oh, but actually I have that too. I actually have this transparency gene, and I was always willing to express my thoughts, and I would always be dedicating my time to this very purposeful thing. And this is about setting scene for a leader. For the stage is from inside, and then the rest is just a question of time. And because everything else is already in our human nature, which is social beings. Once you have set your stage internally, there is no way back. There is only the way forward.
Yes, everything Agnes says, I'm just going to say yes to forever, because definitely change happens inside first, and modeling change is pretty much the only way we can really set the stage. Given that I am endeavouring to teach people how to reach conscious evolution, I have put really quite large amounts of energy into breaking it down into tiny, tiny little incremental pieces so that they don't become the people who join the gym on January the 1st. So they do become the people who 15, 18, 20 months later are still doing meditations every day, connecting. And the thing is, once change begins to happen, it is a self-reinforcing event. And we need to give people, I think, a sense of agency. There's a wonderful old socialist called Raymond Williams who said, to be truly radical is to make hope possible rather than despair convincing. And the people, certainly that I'm working with, a lot of them are Extinction Rebellion or that kind of group of people who look at the world and go, this is not going well, but then have no sense of what they can do other than going to sit in the streets, which is affecting change, but it's a holding action definitely. So giving people agency and then a route map of, if you do this, we will be able to change the world is the best that we can do.
So I would just like if you guys could both share some of your closing thoughts on, steps that you think individuals can take right now. You talked a bit about them, but I think just to wrap up on how we can start making these transformations.
There's a need for a call to action, right? So what the individuals can start doing every single day in their lives that would help them to become leaders of their own change. And then by doing so, they will be mirroring that to the other people around. First of all, it's the honesty. Honesty to themselves. We genetically also have the liar gene. That has helped us, that has served us. And also we have the fear gene, the gene responsible for fear, which is currently teaming up with the lying. And then we are lying about the fear that is imagined and is not real. But then sometimes, of course, we also need to use caution to be very honest with which fear is real and which fear is imagined. But first of all, honesty with yourself. What I mean by that is instincts are by nature telling us what feels good about a certain thing or the choice. And then our intellectual models sometimes are opposing to the instinct and silencing the instinct. So what I mean by honesty, you really spend time listening to what your body instinctively, naturally, historically, genetically is telling to you. There is no other way. You cannot intellectually manage the transformation, because that transformation will be, most of the cases, not helpful, not productive, and maybe even nonsense. So the transformation requires a great deal of listening to yourself and being constantly honest. And even if you're lying to yourself, you just say, oh, I just lied to myself. And that's the honesty. That's number one. And the next is, once we plug in the intellect, so the first, we are awakening and opening up the space for the instinct, for the emotions, for the nature to speak through us. And then we need to use our intellect, right? And when we get to the intellect, then we start to embrace simple tools. And later, once we've got over like shifting one thought, one tiniest thought can be, I'm not eating after 9 p.m. So imagine a person has a dinner every night at 9 p.m. And then, okay, person says, okay, from today, I'm gonna have it at 8:45. Not a big deal, 8:45. After a month, okay, 8:30. Why don't we have 8:40? Like a gradual things, and then they train their nature and brain and all of this hyper system. Oh, I can do that. I do the magic. I can shift it this time and here and there, and this just builds up. That builds up this confidence. That builds up the scene for being the leader within. This is how you build up that strength, and then how to get the consistency going is the vectoral transformation, because this is the reminder. This is what every person can do every day, starting from now.
For me, the habits, I think brushing your teeth differently, going to the gym, those are really useful habits. I think we haven't got time necessarily to progress through an incremental series of small habits. And so I would encourage people two very straightforward things. And one is getting to know yourselves, building internal coherence, which is through the meditations, through close focus, open focus, heart focus meditations. But just as important as that, and the thing that probably fewer people are already doing, is beginning to build heart-based connections with everything that exists. So start simple. Again, we make small steps, but start with something really concrete. So what I have for the students is 8 weeks of visualizations of connecting with water. And every day, we're building the little habits. Every day you connect with your glass of water or your tap or the shower. Connect with that. Really connect to the point where it feels that you're making genuine reciprocal relationship, that you and the water know each other. And then we move to fire, to earth, to air. And then we will move to the rocks, to the trees, to the red kite, to the mountain, so that we can begin to ask the question, what do you want of me? And hear answers that are coherent and clear and constructive and authentic. Agnis is completely right. We absolutely don't have time anymore to tell ourselves stories of success when there are stories of projection. But success is there. The thing is, once we start doing this, we don't need to tell ourselves stories of projection. We can actually just do the stuff. So I think building good habits that are taking us where we need to go is actually what we need to do.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Agnis and Manda, both for joining me today. I think what you've been discussing around transformation is going to be really invaluable towards people wanting to learn about it and to become their own leaders in the future. So thank you so much.